Welcome back to Nutrapreneur, where we explore groundbreaking insights from the frontiers of the nutraceutical industry. I'm Bethany, your host. Today, we're delighted to have Andrew Hebard with us, founder, president, and CEO at Nature's Crops International. Under Andrew's guidance, Nature's Crops is pioneering a regenerative approach to producing specialty plant-based oils, focusing on sustainability and top-tier quality across personal care, human nutrition, and animal wellness sectors. Welcome, Andrew. It's so great to have you today.
Hi, Bethany. Thank you for the opportunity to be here on Nutrapreneur with you.
So, first off, I think it would be great if you could share the story behind the inception of Nature's Crops and your personal drive towards focusing on specialty oilseed crops.
Okay, great. So my background is agriculture. I'm an agricultural scientist by qualification, I guess. And my career has largely been around growing crops and processing those crops into ingredients. And that started way back, kind of like 35 years ago or something. And over time, I've seen agriculture become more dominated by a few dominant commodity crops: soybean, corn, canola, wheat, that sort of thing. And it's become probably harder to introduce new crops into the agriculture environment, sort of specialty oilseed crops particularly. And I think the planet, I think agriculture, I think the environment and the health of our customers greatly benefits from having some diversity. So what I mean by that is that introducing crops that are, for example, things like very low input, have a very low usage of nitrogen or synthetic chemicals is important. Crops that add rotational value to farmers so that they can incorporate biodiversity into their cropping arrangements. Crops that require and provide habitat for pollinators, such as bees and butterflies, is a good thing. So all of these things really they're kind of challenging to do in an agriculture environment unless you sort of develop a specific focus on how am I going to go about doing this. So with Nature's Crops, what we decided to do was to identify a portfolio of either underutilized or non-commercialized oilseed plants that have real therapeutic value to our customers. And as you mentioned, our customers are predominantly humans and animals. And all of those ingredients and the crops that they come from, we set a criteria. They have to help you either look well, move well, or feel well. So they're for the personal care industry, they're for the nutraceutical industry, etc. And and we've built a business. We're vertically integrated from the soil to the oil. So we do everything from plant breeding, we do crop production, we do crop processing, and then we supply these ingredients to the end customer that formulate them into products for the consumer. So really, we're focused in that niche area of trying to develop and really preserve crops that fall outside of broad-scale commodity agriculture.
It's amazing. And you also have a strong commitment to regenerative agriculture. So how does Nature's Crops ensure that its practices contribute more to the environment than they're taking?
It's a really good question. Thank you. So first of all, we're a B Corp. We're B Corp certified, and that really means, as I'm sure you know, and your audience know, that it's about putting purpose before profit and making mindful decisions about the consequences of the decisions you make in terms of how do they affect the environment, how do they affect sustainability. There's a strong ESG component to that as well. And what we're looking for is, as I talked about with some of those crops, is that if we can work with farmers and cultivate crops that are generally and genuinely have a very light touch on the soil, leave a very small footprint. And by that, I mean, very low inputs, but ideally ones that give back rather than that take. So they're not sort of extractive, they're replenishing. That would be an ideal world for us where we're regenerating the land and we're using regenerative agriculture. And how we do that is we actually start measuring things. we're actually measuring and compiling data around about how much do you put in versus how much do you put out, and really showing to farmers that this idea of regenerative agriculture actually can add to their bottom line at the end of the day, because you save money on what you put in, but you actually improve the quality of your soil by measuring things like the organic matter, or how much carbon is sequestered, or how many days the soil is bare. And of course, we hear stories about your topsoil blowing away and that sort of thing through erosion. So we're finding different metrics for that. But the underlying principle one there is that if we can think about regeneration, and it's not just in our crop production, it's in all the components of our supply chain, how can we be more mindful about using less, basically? And then you can sort of translate what that means to your bottom line, hopefully.
Yes, and I'm sure there's quite a few complexities of maintaining a regenerative supply chain. So, what challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them?
So I think one of the first challenges is that sustainability has, in many ways, become a greenwashing term. And it's a box checking exercise for a lot of people. Yeah, is this sustainable? It's grown from a plant, therefore it's sustainable. And that's as far as people go into the question about sustainability. And we're challenging ourselves to look deeper into that space. And there's 3 pillars of sustainability that we're kind of trying to better understand and focus on. There's the environmental sustainability, which is very much touched on by regenerative agriculture. There's the social sustainability, which is how accessible is your product or your services to a broader community of people. So it's sort of like open sourcing for healthy ingredients and that sort of thing. And then there's the economic sustainability, i.e. what you are doing, is it sustainable from a financial point of view? So moving from that catch-all, yes, it's sustainable, to digging into it and saying, this is what it really means, and to try harder to be genuinely sustainable and measure that. That's a key component. And then the other one is, I think, challenging ourselves to always think about, I can probably do a little bit better if I try harder in this area. So I think adopting the mindset that this is a process of continuous improvement rather than it's a pass or fail. And some other forms of agriculture, for example, organic. So organic agriculture, organic food, it's a binary outcome. It's either is or it isn't. And that, in many ways, is a deterrent to a lot of people, because it puts up higher barriers to entry for many people to get into, either at the production side or at the consumer side in terms of pricing. If you go down a regenerative route, because it's not a pass or fail, it's a process of continuous improvement, it actually brings the mass with you. So everyone's working towards similar goals. And I think we're seeing a greater understanding and acceptance of that. So those would be the 2 areas that we're focusing on as a business.
Yes, that's great. And next, I would love to talk about ahi flour. So I understand that it's a plant-based alternative to fish oil. So what's the story behind its development and why is it particularly relevant for our audience?
Well, you've asked me one of my favorite questions there, so thank you for that. So ahi flour, as you said, it's a plant-based alternative to fish oil. And being an alternative to fish oil, what we're really talking about is it's a plant-based source of omega-3 fatty acids. And its background goes back many, many years, but we started out to try to find a plant-based alternative that could really stand up against fish oil in scientific studies, so that the consumer could actually look at this and say, oh, I understand why I'm taking this, and I understand why this is good for me. And there's many things that you and I and your audience have in common. One of them is that every cell in our body has omega-3 fatty acids, and they control so many metabolic functions, from our inflammation management, our immune function, hormonal regulation, cognition, mood, our gut-brain axis. So many things are either linked to or controlled by omega-3 fatty acids. And the other thing is that most of us have in common is we're not getting enough of them in our diets. Our diets are becoming more and more deficient in them because of the food that we're eating, and they're less prevalent in sort of mainstream commodity foods and oils. So we set about looking for something that the consumer could really embrace, and something that doesn't have necessarily the sensory challenges that fish oil does. So it doesn't taste of fish oil, doesn't smell of fish oil, doesn't repeat like fish oil does. And something that can be plant-based, traceable back to the source it was grown in, and free of many of the associated or perceived negatives with marine oils, such as some of the contaminants, PCBs, PAHs, microplastics, that sort of thing. So we found this wild plant species. It's a weed that grows in different parts of the world, but it's actually the plant kingdom's most sort of biologically advanced and nutrient-dense source of plant-based omega-3s. And having now researched this for well over a decade in terms of its scientific health benefits, performs in many ways in a superior mode of action to marine oils. So we've come up with something, or we've developed something that is, the consumers love it. They like the story behind it. It fits our model, as we talked about earlier, for nature's crops of being biodiverse, very low input, great for the, it's great for the land that we grow it on. It's great for the consumers. It certainly helps you look well, move well, and feel well when we talk about skin condition, joint condition, and that sort of thing. And also now thinking about something that is one of my key motivators for both Ahi Flower and Nature's Crops is this theme of regeneration. So we looked at plant-based omegas as a way of introducing regenerative ingredients that help people in their overall nutritional and sort of wellness goals and ambitions, and to reach their sort of full vitality. So we've developed this plant that produces regenerative ingredients. And then we thought, well, what about if we grew it regeneratively? So we've got a plant that produces regenerative ingredients. We're now growing it regeneratively and processing it regeneratively, so free of any solvents or what have you that would be typically associated with oilseed plants or oilseed crops.
This episode is brought to you by NutraPayments.com. If your business needs credit card processing that fully integrates with most major Nutra software platforms, offers the lowest industry prices, and has built-in features like recurring billing, $0 trials, and chargeback prevention, then visit us at NutraPayments.com for a free online quote.
And in turn, we're regenerating the oceans, because each acre that we grow of Ahi flower produces as much oil, sort of equivalency, as about 500,000 anchovies. So, why this is so motivating to us as a business and my team is that it's like this virtuous circle of life to grow a plant that kind of enriches the environment or benefits the environment. When we process it, it provides ingredients that are regenerative to ourselves and our pets and animals. And in doing so, we're taking a lot of pressure off the sort of oceans from sort of fish oil and extraction business there. So that's a kind of a long answer to what Ahi flower is all about. But in a nutshell, it's a plant-based alternative to fish oil. And it's really surprised us, and I think all of the researchers that's looked at it, as just how efficacious it is, and the results that we're seeing in both human clinical trials and animal clinical trials and that sort of thing. So there's a lot more to come on this. We're kind of early into our journey yet, but we feel that we're making great progress and doing good things.
Yes, it's so interesting. And, I think it will be very successful because individuals want omega-3s in their diet, but they don't always want to go to the fish oil source because, as you said, it's kind of gotten a negative connotation in the last several years with the contaminants, or say you have dietary restrictions or you're vegan or something like that. Fish oil isn't necessarily going to work for you.
That's right. And so it's funny. I was presenting. I was fortunate enough to present at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about some of the key considerations that people think about as they transition from using a source like fish oil to a source like ahi flower oil. And, there's many of those things that go into it. And there's a strong case for saying, well, actually, fish oil has been relatively abundant. It's been relatively cheap. It certainly works as a source for omega-3s. Why change? But now the forces of, I think, sustainability, consumer preference are showing that there's actually a very compelling reason to change, that people are looking for something that's sort of different and addresses those sensory issues. But one thing that really struck me is I was thinking to try to leave the audience with a poignant message. And I had this old photograph. This is back in the days when you had sort of, printed photographs. And we were on a beach in South Africa, and it was 25 years ago. And my two daughters were 4 and 5 at the time. And they were on this sandy beach with penguins all around them. And this was the population of penguins that there's the only population that live on the African continent, and they frequent this area near South Africa, on the beach in South Africa. And you could literally walk into the ocean, and there were penguins there. And I heard this report on the news about 3 weeks ago that same population that we were in has declined by 95% in the last 25 years. And I thought, gosh, how it's tragic, and it's just unacceptable to see a species decline to that extent in their lifetime, let alone in my lifetime. And the reasons are that the principal source of food that they eat is being sort of spread with a new predator on the block. Mm-hmm. We're harvesting stuff that they've been eating, and it's kind of tragic that their primary source of food is being harvested for, in this case, fish oil manufacture. And I just think we have to be better than that. We have to think differently. We have to be a little bit more innovative, because there is a solution there, and it just takes some sort of thought leadership and some business leadership to make that change.
Yes, absolutely. Innovation is key in this industry. Mm-hmm. And Nature's Crops is also known for its Crop Assured 365 process. Can you explain how this technology enhances traceability and quality control from farm to product?
Yeah. So we're a vertically integrated business, as I mentioned, kind of we say from soil to oil, which means everything that we do starts with crops that we grow. We only grow crops that we process ourselves, and we only process crops that we grew ourselves. So we have this sort of closed loop system. And to demonstrate a chain of custody, if you like, or complete traceability through the supply chain, we developed a system of data capturing at every point in the supply chain that starts off with the seed that we sell the farmer or provide to the farmer. We monitor his crop or her crop. We look at what's being used in the fields. We then transport the crop to our crushing plant. We crush it and then refine the oil, and it goes on to our customers. At each stage in that chain, there's sort of like a passport process that you sign off on it and say, okay, I know where this came from and I know where it's going to. And as well as being able to trace things through the supply chain, it also enables you to exclude things from the supply chain. What you're trying to do is preserve the quality of the stuff that's in your supply chain, but you're also trying to eliminate or exclude potential contaminants or things that extraneous material that you don't want in there. And this Crop Assured 365, the idea behind that is that for 365 days of the year, we're assuring that supply chain that relates to that particular crop. So it enables us to talk about traceability. It enables us to talk about how could have things got into the supply chain that you don't want in there, excluding things. And a key example there would be certain chemicals might be banned, like glyphosate, or you might want to make sure that you can exclude genetically modified materials. So that's a key part of it. Another one is that, as I mentioned, within the world of specialty oilseed crops and specialty crops generally, there are often only one or two suppliers globally that actually make up that supply chain. So supply chain interruptions become really problematic for the consumer and the processor. So what we set out to achieve with Crop Assure 365 was also to show that we had a really robust, interruption-free, risk mitigated supply chain. Now, you can't manage every risk in every situation, but what you can do is start looking at and saying, where are things likely to go wrong? And how can I avoid that happening? So at a crop growing level, you might say, I'm going to grow my crops in 4 different countries at different latitudes or longitudes to mitigate extreme weather events. You might have different processing locations. You might have different ways of moving, logistics and moving the crop from point A to point B. So what we're trying to do is take risk out of the supply chain so that we can say at any one time, the ingredients that we supply will be of an assured provenance, a guaranteed quality, and continuous availability. There won't be any supply chain interruptions. And touch wood, so far that's been something that we can deliver on. And our customers really value that assurity they get from working with us, because no one wants to be the person that makes the phone call to say, sorry, we've run out.
Right. Absolutely. That's so important. And could you provide us an example of how technology has helped nature's crops streamline operations to improve product quality in a significant way?
Yeah, I think, data capturing is so important. Data capturing at the production level about how to improve efficiency, how to reduce cost, how to reduce waste is a key thing. Processing technology in terms of how can we achieve more with less is another key part of that. And I think we've made some good advancements in that area. We haven't embraced, I shouldn't say embrace, meaning that we're not actively not embracing it, but we don't know how to embrace AI for our business. I'd love to some sort of feedback from that, maybe from your audience, as to how other businesses like ours might have embraced their AI, but I'm not sure how we would use that yet in our business. So it's really been data capturing to help other stakeholders in our supply chain be more efficient, be more streamlined, lower their costs, and also hopefully reduce their risk.
Yes, absolutely. And looking ahead, what new initiatives or projects is Nature's Crops planning to further its impact in the nutraceutical and personal care industries?
So I think our biggest focus at the moment is advancing ahi flour, both the oil, which probably for the last 6 or 7 years, we're really focused on getting the science behind ahi flour oil as a really viable alternative to marine oils, well established and well understood. And when we grow the crop, so if you imagine it's a small seeded crop like canola or flax or chia, we grow the crop and we press. We only use mechanical pressing to get the oil out. We don't use any chemical solvents. So you're actually left with the residue of the seed, similar to flax meal or canola meal or hemp meal that people have been speaking about. And we've really challenged ourselves to find markets for that product, so that we're turning what has been a sort of like a co-product or a byproduct into an upcycled functional ingredient in of itself. And we've had quite a lot of success in that area, working with some kind of real industry thought leaders in that area, researchers, formulators, nutritionists. And we've developed some applications using the press cake in companion animal supplements, particularly think about dogs, horses, rodent species, surprisingly enough, and poultry. And we've got some great examples of it being used in poultry to replace things like oyster shells, which is kind of almost an unintuitive, unexpected outcome, but that's performing very well. And also in equine nutrition, we're using the residue from the seed. And I think we're starting to realize that that is a big opportunity for us in terms of developing recognition and funding more research into it and that sort of thing. So I think that's probably where our focus is going to be, because there's opportunity there, to be frank, but also it's great as we look holistically at us as a business, the less we have as considered as a waste stream or a byproduct, the better. So, upcycling, adding value to functional ingredients is very much kind of central to our theme at the moment, and is going to be a key part of our strategy going forward.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of exciting things in the pipeline.
Yeah, there is. There's always more to do than hours in the day and resource available, but that kind of keeps us motivated. And I'm a fisherman in my spare hours, so by being a fisherman, you're an eternal optimist, right? So you always think the next time or tomorrow is going to produce more than it did today. So I think that's very much the case with business as well.
Yes, very true. And how do you see the role of sustainability evolving within the specialty oils market? And what steps is Nature's Crops taking to lead this change?
I think it's going to become more and more important. I think it's almost a de facto consequence of being involved in something that's a specialty ingredient, because you're invariably dealing with consumers that are making the choice of going towards something that's different, that's either functionally different, produced differently, or grown differently. And they have they vote with their wallets. They demand things such as traceability, sustainability, and we completely support that. We want to meet the consumer where they are rather than expect them to come to us. We're going to meet them where they are and meet their requirements. And I think, as I talked about with sustainability, moving from a box checking exercise to something where people can say, so show me. Don't just tell me this, show me. How does this actually work, and demonstrate to me that this is really sustainable. So I think there's going to be a wider uptake of certifications around that. And what does that really mean? I think consumers are going to ask more probing questions to their supplement manufacturers or supplement suppliers about where did this come from? Why did you use this ingredient? And hold us to a higher level of account. I think that, we're in an industry where people are often taking a fairly sizable bite out of their disposable income to take something over and above what they get from their typical diets. And by definition, a supplement is you're making up for something maybe that your background diet doesn't have. And that, over a period of a month or over a period of a year, actually mounts up to be quite a sizable investment. So the consumer is very much voting with their wallets, and they're going to say, look, if I'm spending this much money on these things, I'm going to hold you to a higher level of account. And I think that's a good thing for our industry. And I think it'll separate out those that are truly driven by wanting to do a better thing, like having B Corp certification, which you can't greenwash that. There's other initiatives like 1% for the planet and how much plastic you recycle and that sort of thing. So I think all of these are going to feature more strongly, and I think that will have a ripple effect through to mainstream food products and beverage products and that sort of thing, because you can't ignore it. Everything we look at the moment is how does this become sustainable in X number of years from now? Either are we digging it out of the ground, or are we harvesting it from the ocean? At what point do we make a conscious decision to say we have to be regenerative, we have to put stuff back in there? So this isn't a fad. This is something that's evolving, and I think is going to make businesses like ours think very carefully about what it really means to us and how we can be better.
Yes, absolutely. I think consumers are starting to challenge brands a lot more, and they want to see the data, they want to see the information, they want to understand things and educate themselves. So I think it's great that you're taking steps to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and information now is so readily accessible to anybody. If you want to go and look for something, you can find it. So I think we have to bear that in mind as well. That just to say something is sustainable is not enough these days. You're going to have to prove it.
Yes, absolutely. And you've mentioned that your products have some broad applications, so from human nutrition to animal wellness. So, what strategies are you employing to expand your market reach while staying true to your core values?
So um, I think if we look at the umbrella under which we sit at the moment, is about ingredients that help you look well, move well, and feel well. And we then turn around and say, okay, well, what does that really mean? It's great for that 5-second attention grabbing span that you've got when you're trying to look at something on a shelf and go, do I go for product A or product B? And you say, great, look well, move well, feel well. But then we have to think about, okay, so let us substantiate that from a scientific point of view. And when we're talking about look well, we're looking at ingredients that are beneficial in skin health, hair health, that sort of thing. There's your appearance, and there's a lot of science and a lot of plants provide very beneficial ingredients. That if you look at most cosmetic ingredients, after you get through the chemicals that you can't pronounce and water, most of the other actives actually come from plant extracts. So we're sort of looking at plant extracts in the look well category. And then in the move well, what we're talking about really is things like joint mobility, post-exercise recovery, inflammation management, and that sort of thing. So again, developing science and demonstrating that this product can actually really help in these specific areas. And then lastly is the feel well, which is things like gut microbiome, its cognition, its immune function, and that sort of thing. And again, looking for plant-based ingredients that have a strong scientific underpinning in those areas. So, and it's going to come, for us, it's going to come from the portfolio of crops I mentioned, like including ahi flower, but also from the co-products that we develop from them, and making sure that our science really helps support either those claims or those statements.
Yes, that's great. Well, Andrew, thank you once again for sharing how Nature's Crops International is transforming the landscape of specialty oils with a focus on sustainability and unmatched quality. For our listeners looking to learn more about Nature's Crops and their innovative products, check out the links provided in our episode description. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts on today's episode via our social media channels. Join us next time on Nutrapreneur for more insights into the evolving world of nutraceuticals. Until then, stay informed and inspired.